Hello everybody, my name is Jake. In my day job, I am the head of communications for APAC for OpenAI. I spent about the last 8 years doing various jobs in Singapore and in the US for Airbnb, but more importantly, I am a seed investor and I'm an advisor to Handprint. And today I have the CEO and co-founder of Handprint with me. We're going to do an Ask Me Anything where we take some questions from Wefunder investors. We get to know a little bit more about Mathias, about the company. Ready to go?
Ready.
Wonderful. Okay, so why don't we start just by telling us a bit about Handprint, who you are, what you've been doing, the company vision.
So I'm an engineer by background, and when I met my two co-founders, Ryan and Simon, in 2019, at the time they were commissioned by the United Nations Environment Programme to write a report about how to use new digital technologies to benefit sustainable development. I was completely fascinated by their research. We worked together on a pro bono basis for a year, and after a year we decided to launch Handprint, a company. So Handprint is a scientific term. It describes the sum of your positive impact as opposed to your footprint, which is the sum of your negative impact. The vision of the company is basically to upgrade the economy, the global economy, which today is extractive. So it extracts resources, doesn't give back to the planet, into a regenerative economy that benefits nature, that is actively good for the planet, that is, I would say, an engine for good. We're making sustainability profitable and profit sustainable. And it's only if we actually reach that stage that we can enable a systemic change that really transform the economy, basically.
Great, and we're going to get into some of the questions from folks from Wefunder, but first let me ask one more question. You've previously done venture capital rounds, you're now doing an equity round via Wefunder. Why?
The excellent question. So it's a question that we have a lot from investors on Wefunder. So we did raise a $3 million VC round, traditional VC round, in two steps. One with business angels that we pulled into an SPV or part of this first investment, together with very professional investors, people like Elizabeth de Rothschild, Sébastien Guillot, Kengnam Lee, which is very famous in Asia for his investments. And then the participation of 3 venture capital firms. What we realized is that the added value of our first pool of 42 individuals, opening doors for us, generating warm introductions to the CEO of this and this big company, was actually, sorry for my VC, my VC investor who are listening, but like it was actually much more added value for the business, and we wanted to replicate that. And what a better way there is to replicate that at scale with an equity crowdfunding. With that equity crowdfunding, we are aiming to welcome in our journey about 500, 600 retail investors. So imagine the impact that we had with 42 individuals, what we can do with 500, 600 people that all have a professional network, all are passionate about our mission and want to help. It creates a lot of shortcuts and a lot of visibility for the company that we want to replicate.
Great. Okay, then why don't we get into some of the questions from some of the folks from Wefunder. Can you explain the relationship between the Singapore and US entity?
Yeah.
So this is a question that's, clearly people are interested from more of a, investment perspective, how the structure works.
So today, the business, all of our contracts, all of our clients, all of our employment contracts even are hosted in the Singapore entity, which is the entity that we started with, basically, because we are living in Singapore. Most of our investors are Singaporean investors, actually. And as we are expanding our reach, so today we are deployed in 24 countries, partnerships. So we don't need to operate an entity in 24 of those countries. We actually have an entity in Singapore, an entity in Indonesia, and recently we opened an entity in the US for two things: to address the US market, so to be able to invoice US clients from there, to develop a team in the US, so to be able to hire people from that entity. And that US entity ultimately is going to become the holding. So today it's Handprint Tech Pte Ltd, a Singaporean entity who owns the business. And we got our board to validate that there will be a swap. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, Handprint Inc. will own all of the other entities. And there is a promissory note between those two entities that states that this will be done before the next liquidity event. So before our Series A, there will be all of this admin work that will be done to make the US entity the holding company for all subsidiaries.
Got it. And let's stick on this theme of international kind of expansion and your footprint. Sorry to use the term footprint, I should rather say handprint. But let's talk about Handprint beyond Asia. So obviously founded in Singapore, and I know you already have customers and clients in this part of the world, but how are you thinking about expansion into other regions?
So that's a very good question. So basically we have two types of strategies for expansion. We have direct expansion and channel expansion, or expansion through channel partnerships. It's basically securing a company that has access to an entire industry to become your exclusive reseller, to become your partner, which is something we've just done with a big European company, 15,000 employees, multi-billion-dollar company. We actually signed a few weeks ago, and it's been the launch was yesterday in presence of the French ambassador in Singapore. And this large company is reselling Handprint Impact and Handprint services in Europe, and actually soon in the US as well, to their clients, which are banks, right? They around 40% of the retail banks in the world are their clients. So through that partner, we have access now in the US, in Europe, and in some countries in Southeast Asia, to a reseller, basically, that is able to sell our services and impact without us having to have a presence there. That's one. It's a winning strategy for many startups, this type of channel partnership. The other option that we're also taking in some geographies is to do it directly. So we have some clients, for example, in Japan. We have a client in Japan, but we don't even have a presence in Japan, right? We invoice everything through our Singapore entity, and we've been global since day one. With clients in Australia, in the UK, in the US, from day one as well, smaller clients, that's what we're targeting now. In France, etc., many countries in Europe. In Singapore, obviously, where we started. Two main strategies, direct and channel partnerships. And channel partnership has been a deep focus of our go-to-market deployment until now. And it's long because you need to secure a lot of commitment from a big company, secure budget and all of that. But once it's signed and once it's being deployed by a huge machinery, that has so much more power than a startup like us, it's then extremely sticky, and it's a machine that just sells.
So tell us more then about the clients, the customers that Handprint is working with. You talk about the reseller model. So there's obviously resellers that you're working through, but tell us more about the end customer. Give us some examples.
Yeah.
Who is Handprint actually selling to?
So we're a B2B business, so we sell to companies, but we sell to a certain type of company. Mm-hmm. We sell to companies that, one, need to engage their customers at quite a high frequency. And companies that want to develop a sustainability strategy that generate profit for the company. So what does it mean in more concrete terms? Examples of industries that really match with our product and services. It's everything around loyalty platforms, banking, payment services, e-commerce, telecommunication. So those are industries that need really to engage their customers, people like you and I, through the angle of something positive, because they don't want to keep selling their product and it's 2024 and they need to engage through innovative ways. And there is an entire generation of people, the Gen Z, millennials in city centers, in all over the world really, that want to take action and that feel powerless. So we enable big brands to empower them to take action, right? And we really, since the beginning, we have this really strongly in our DNA that our business model should not be set up in a way that the consumer pays, but the brand actually that empowers their consumers actually bear the cost of action. And that's a very important thing for us, because otherwise we would rely on individual donations, but it's not our mission. Our mission is to upgrade the economy, and for that, we need to integrate into businesses, really.
And I think we have another question here that is very relevant to that. And I think that this question comes from, it's kind of predicated on the fact that a lot of investors want to invest in companies that are doing things in the sustainability space, but they don't always know how those companies are going to also generate revenue and generate profit at the end of the day, which is, as an investor, is obviously important. So can you tell us more about, you told us about customers, you've told us about how, the model of sales, but how does Handprint actually generate revenue? What is the business model?
Absolutely. So because of the strong scientific DNA in the three co-founders of Handprint, basically, I'm an engineer. My two co-founders are PhD, one PhD in climate policies, one PhD in strategy and digital sustainability. And the background in non-profit organization from my two co-founders, Simon and Ryan, they come from the NGO world. They saw firsthand that an NGO on the ground receive 10% to 30% of what's actually being sponsored by a big corporate. So what local communities on the ground that are in charge of protecting and restoring ecosystems, they are a lot of middlemen before that takes a big chunk of the money. It doesn't mean that they don't produce value, but we think that it's too much basically, and now using technology we can have a much more efficient way. So since day one, we decided that our business model, the way Handprint makes money, should not be a function of the volume of impact that we sell. We should not derive revenue from a commission-based model. Otherwise, we will be incentivized as a business because we need to make profit. We have investors and we want this to be a success. We want the business to be a success. We would be incentivized to have high commissions. Like most of our competitors today, they take from 30 to 65, 70% sometimes of what's supposed to go to the ground. So for us, we capped our commission from 8% to 18%. It depends on the complexity. Some countries to consolidate the bank fees and all of that, the complexity varies. But our main revenue stream comes from services, and in particular subscription to services that those big companies require from us. And it's about advanced tracking, what's happening on the ground, engagement and communication services. How can I get my communication team to tell the world about what we are doing in a scientifically valid way, in a way that is measurable, that is auditable, and how to disclose that positive impact to international standards, to international frameworks. So those services are not really related to the volume of impact that is being sold. You can plant 10,000 trees, which is quite small, or restore 200 square meters of ecosystem, even smaller. But you want to have, you can buy services from Handprint that enable you to track, engage around this impact, communicate this impact, and disclose it. So we have two streams, commission that are capped on the impact, so that we optimize the dollar to impact ratio that is being created. And most importantly, services that corporates, especially large corporates, subscribe to track, engage, communicate, and disclose their impact.
Great. And a follow-up question to that from one of the folks at Wefunder speaks more to the other side of that coin, which is more about the impact and the positive impact. And I know a lot of potential investors who want to invest in this space will be wondering, what is the good that Handprint really does on the ground? So can you talk to us a little bit more about, that positive impact, about how you perhaps measure that and define that, and maybe even what has been the positive impact that Handprint has generated to date?
Our impact spans across 7 categories. Many positive impact platforms actually only focus on carbon impact, like forestry, nature-based solutions for carbon, or direct air capture. So it's really about carbon. And there is a deep shift happening in the corporate sustainability world, pushed by better science, recent science. And it's about this understanding that sustainability is not only about carbon, it's about planetary health. And planetary health cannot be solved just by planting trees. There are some ecosystems on the planet that have a very critical function for planetary health that are very bad at absorbing carbon. Like coral reef restoration is actually super critical for underwater biodiversity. So we have 7 categories of impact, from mangrove restoration, terrestrial forest, coral reef restoration, river plastic, ocean plastic cleanup, habitat preservation, seagrass bedding, that all have their own characteristics. And we help those teams on the ground to digitize their impact, so to digitize their reporting in a way that matches international reporting standards, so they can actually have access to international corporate funding. Otherwise, they are quite excluded from all of the funding schemes that exist. And as a result, only the big NGOs, the big project developers, WWF, Conservation International, they are doing an amazing job, but only they can benefit from all of these schemes because they have the infrastructure, they have the talented engineers to report, and there are so many small organizations all over the world that are doing amazing work involving local communities that know the ground. And just with a helping hand of like a little bit of digitization, an app that tells them today you need to report on this, you need to upload this data, then they are completely guided through what needs to be done. And suddenly there is an entirely new supply of impact that's available to those big corporates that want to fund projects. And actually just last month, we just reached 3 million square meters of ecosystem restored. I don't know how much it is. Sorry, I'm very European. I don't know how much it is in square feet, but in equivalent in terms of football fields, it's 560 football fields. Maybe that will help to do the conversion. So it's a huge plot of lands that are spread across 24 countries, basically. These natural ecosystems are mangrove forests, coral reefs, etc., that we fund and then digitally monitor the restoration and the protection activity on behalf of our clients.
Got it. And I think when startups first are founded, when they first begin, their initial idea of how companies will use their tech, is often very different from what it becomes. So I'm curious, what's that journey been like for you? But maybe more specifically, has there been any, surprising or particularly interesting use case that companies have found for Handprint's technology?
So we launched in 2020, right during COVID, the beginning of the pandemic, and so we applied the Y Combinator Bible. You solve one problem for one industry for one persona buyer, and we started with e-commerce because at the time it was the only industry that was actually still growing, right? So we developed this like plug and play Shopify integrations for small e-stores that want to do good for the planet. They just click, design their integration, choose their project, and boom, it's already on their website. And then we had a few media features and all of that. We were then contacted by much bigger organizations in the e-commerce space first, with a big Southeast Asian client, Lazada. But then we were contacted by industries that we didn't even know we could solve a problem for. And I think one of the most interesting is a company called IDEMIA that is buying from us a technology license. So they are licensing our technology in a white labeled way. So they are basically using all of our technology for like tracking of impact, monitoring of impact, access to pictures on the ground, and so on. And they take that and put this in their own software. Their software is a card management software for retail banks. And so imagine like you work at a bank, you're a customer engagement professional, you're in charge of designing lifestyle programs. And like you have a lifestyle program for travelers. You have a card for miles, you have a lifestyle program for, young couples. You have cashback for baby products, or like they design banking programs to acquire new customers because it makes sense for them. They have access to loyalty programs and all of that. And so this company integrated Handprint impact and technological capabilities into their software so that any bank, starting 1st of September this year, any bank in the world, any of their clients, can issue payment cards that regenerate the planet with the cashback or with a top-up or with loyalty points. They can design their own climate program, and they do that to acquire and retain Gen Z. And I think it solves for them a problem that we were not even trying to solve. We are trying to solve an impact problem, and this industry sees value in what we do because for them, it creates business growth. It creates acquisition of younger audiences, and it's just something we never really thought about to white label our technology. It was a long commercial negotiation, but it's one of those things that made us decide to do a really a pivot towards enterprise sales. So selling our technology and our impact network to large enterprise accounts, big companies, rather than having, like 10,000 clients that are paying a $20 subscription. It's way less clients that are paying way more because they see the value in what we've built, which is a layer of trust, right? Between a trust and making the impact that's happening on the ground tangible with pictures that you receive on a weekly basis, with quantification, with a map where you can zoom in and see. And they value all of these tools that we've built much more than our first cohort of clients in the e-commerce space. For them, it's enough if we tell them, you have planted 100 trees this month, thank you for your support. So those banks and these larger industries, they require stronger frameworks, trust, quantification. And so because they value more what we've developed, it's they are willing to pay much more.
Great. Well, maybe we'll close off with one final question, and I think a very important one, which is, what's next for Handprint? You've obviously made some really great strides, developed, amazing products. So I think investors or potential investors are very curious. What's on the roadmap? What is next for you?
So on the supply side, so our supply is regenerative impact projects that we assetize, right? We define a unit of impact for every project, and we sell that as a service on the other side. On this side of the marketplace, on the supply side, we have a very organic growth. On a weekly basis, we have 5-10 organizations that are applying to our waitlist. So they are submitting an application that's then being reviewed by our impact team. They do like KYC of the project leaders and a scientific assessment of the project, right? So this side of our business, because we provide so much value to NGOs, right, has a very organic growth. And on the other side, we are going to double down on our channel partnership strategy. So I was mentioning that we just secured a very large channel partner in the banking space. We are actually in the process of replicating that with 2 other industries in the travel and hospitality industry and in loyalty tech, right? And having those now 1, soon 2 verticals that are self-selling with no involvement from Handprint sales teams, because we want it's the best setup for us, because then we can focus on what we know to do best, which is the science of regeneration, selecting projects, onboarding them, digitizing them, and finding ways for corporates to make it financially rewarding to invest in nature. So for us, what's next? It's a very aggressive channel partnership go-to-market deployment, and in particular in the US, which is a very large market. And now that we have demonstrated in Europe, in Southeast Asia, that we provide value to large corporates and we enable them to make sustainability very strategic for their business because it becomes a lever of growth. Now we're expanding to the US as well, and we are very excited about this.
So how does Handprint compare with competitors, with peer group companies in terms of the impact it's creating in the world?
So I don't really have figures to compare against competitors, or in our space it's not really competitors, it's companies that have the same mission, really. What I can say is that until today, Handprint clients have funded around $1.6 million of restoration, which really puts us in one of the leading platforms. So that's one of the revenue streams, capped commission on this. But where we really make the most of the revenue is on services that we sell. And as an example, we are launching 15th of September a Nature OS. It's a nature operating system. Think of it as, for any company, it's their software to do anything related to nature, right? And we have pre-sold $270,000 of yearly subscription for this tool. Some of it is actually already paid. Some users, like the one I was mentioning in the banking space, are already using it. But really, it puts us in a category of leading companies in the space.
So we've heard a lot about the business model, about the growth plans. We have a question here that's more focused on the sustainability aspect of the company, the impact component. And that is, can you give us an example of the impact that Handprint's delivering on the ground. Maybe talk about a specific project.
There is actually two projects that are very close to my heart. So we have, I would say, very standard projects on the platform, like projects that issue carbon credits. We have now more and more projects around biodiversity, etc. But there are two that I really, really like. One is a coral reef restoration project in Indonesia. They are planting reef stars, so it's like iron stars where they fix baby corals on it that they get from like broken bits of corals. And it's just a great project because for every reef star that we found on the platform, a part of this, I think 8%, is going to a scholarship for local communities to learn about how to welcome tourists into the reef, what is the science of corals, how to take care of them. And I think a great regeneration project is only great because of by involving people. And the people aspect has been a bit lost in many sustainability projects. So I think this one is great. And like, I did a video. I visited that project and we did a video about the difference between when we started funding this project and 2 years later. And it's just amazing to see the impact and see the small fish that are just curious and look at you. And it's a lot of biodiversity, a lot of life that came back to the reef. The first time we visited, it was nothing. It was sand. It was all dead corals everywhere. And now it's amazing to see all of that life coming back, star after star. And we follow on our screen, we have a tracking screen for this project in the office. We follow this project, like week after week growing. And we look at the pictures on the platform that are being updated, the videos, of like turtles coming back to the reef. And I'm a diver, so it's a type of project that is really close to my heart because it's not a type of project that is very popular. Companies like to fund forest because most of them have carbon targets and they think in terms of carbon offsetting, right? But they are very critical, vital ecosystems like this, like those coral reefs, that are so important for the balance of global ecosystems and so important for planetary health.
Well, I think that's all the questions. So thank you, Mathias, for taking the time to answer from some potential investors. Thank you to people from Wefunder for asking them. And I hope that provides a lot of great insight into Handprint and what's in store for the future.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys.